Welcome to Just the Myth. Sometimes you're not in the right headspace to listen to a guy talk about stretching the muscle and tearing the fascia, but you still want to listen to that guy mispronounce mythological names despite his best well-researched efforts. This is for you. On Just the Myth, I'll cast aside the fitness portion of Fitness and Folklore entirely. There's just some myths out there that I love and believe should be shared that don't quite fit in with the nature of mythic muscle. You and I will explore those tales in this series, along with maybe just a tinge of history. Just the Myth's sibling, Just the Fit, is probably more your speed if you're looking for something actionable. Something you can directly apply in the gym for your own edifice. Of course, if you need a bit of both, Mythic Muscle's still there waiting for you. And hey, if you're not interested in the myth and you're just here to support me, you've got a very, very special place in my heart. Thank you. If you want to support me further, you can find me on nearly every social media platform. Patreon, my preferred platform, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Patreon, and Instagram by searching for Mythic Muscle Podcast and looking for the helmet crossed with the barbell and the microphone. Papa Legba opened the gate. Open the gate for me, Papa Legba, that I may pass. When I return, I will thank the Loa. Papa Legba is one of the most interesting legends to rise from the American South. His roots are ancient and well-founded among many African peoples, and today Papa Legba is still regarded in religious reverence. To understand the legend, we've got to drink deep the dregs of history for a moment. New Orleans strikes itself the cultural epicenter for some of the most colorful traditions, a beautiful amalgam of African, French, and Spanish ties. The streets themselves are electric and brimming with celebration. The blending of the Cajun and the Creole people, the meshing of the Irish and Italian, all serves to create this intense, rich latticework that is both spellbinding and historically fascinating. The city of New Orleans is one of attitude, spice, flair, and music. Its people celebrate festivals and hold parties at the very cocktail bars that propelled the whole bartending business to one of great heights. Mardi Gras is the most well-known and the biggest festival New Orleans has to share. It's a bombastic commemoration of ethnic roots, the city itself, its people, its food, its drink, its art, its great superstitions. It is the human spirit captured and let loose for months on end. Among those great superstitions lies the practice of voodoo, an all-encompassing term used to describe a series of traditions related to the West African religion of voodoo. Surviving elements of the religion are spread among the entirety of the African diaspora. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of forms of voodoo. Some forms are wildly different and others are much the same. The largest delineating factor is geographic location. As an example, Haitian voodoo, the form which is most commonly tied to the American South, and Dominican voodoo are at face somewhat similar, but in practice and upon further research are wildly different religions. It should be noted that voodoo is a practiced religion. It is not idle superstition and should be treated with grace. Today, the primary center of practice for voodoo is the aforementioned city of New Orleans. But you mightn't hear the word voodoo used, due to a non-explicit ban of the term in the 1800s. I say non-explicit because there's never been a law suppressing the practice of voodoo, but in the mid to late 1800s, enslaved Haitians and free people of color were actively oppressed for their practice of their beliefs. This fear of oppression led practitioners to use phrases referring to themselves as those who walk with the Loa or any other variation of that sentiment. The history of voodoo in America is one intrinsically tied to enslaved Africans, and as such, much of it has been suppressed. In recent years, there has been an increase in voodoo awareness and a resurgence in its public appearance, which is awesome. One of the most prominent figures rising into the modern zeitgeist is Papa Legba, and it's not difficult to see why. Papa Legba is described as the chief elocutioner of voodoo's practitioners, capable of speaking all human languages. In Africa, prior to the forced displacement of many Africans, Papa Legba was primarily worshipped as a fertility god and a trickster. His role as both diminished and gave way to a being of extreme mysticism and knowledge. Papa Legba's status as a warrior, educator, and petitioner of the Loa, voodoo's godlike spirits, elevated him to the most well-known figure of the religion and the most venerated. He became synonymous with the crossroad spirits. And should you find yourself at a point of weakness or indecision, seek out the crossroad with dark rum in hand, offer it to Papa Legba, and he will find you and return your offering with his counsel. Sometimes Papa Legba grants you a tenebrous connection with magic, or he simply answers a question you've unknowingly held too close to heart. Papa Legba is the doorway to the world of voodoo spirits, and as such, he is the first spirit evoked in ceremony and the last, to open the gate and to close the path. He acts as a psychopomp, almost, guiding humans to their place among the spirits, or delivering petitions of voodoo practitioners to the Loa. Given his ability to open and close doorways, or to remove obstacles, he is seen as a protector, a giver, and a deeply personal figure. Papa Legba is often depicted as an old man, well-dressed in red and black, his attire always fitting the circumstance he finds himself invoked within, carrying a cane and likely smoking a pipe or brandishing a bottle of dark rum. His veve, or spiritual symbol used to incant his presence, is a series of interlocking keys reflective of his power, and a cane to the right demarcating the symbol as his. The tale most associated with Papa Legba is that of Robert Johnson, the blues musician said to have sold his soul to a crossroads demon. In my research, it seems to be contentious whether or not Robert Johnson sold his soul to the Christian devil or bartered it to Papa Legba, but the more I read, the more my personal sway is bent toward the African myth. The story goes that Robert Johnson, a fledgling musician in rural Mississippi with great aspirations but little talent, walked to a crossroads one night with his guitar, where there he found a massive dark-skinned man who then promptly took the guitar and tuned it. From there, Robert Johnson became the best musician in town, playing music like no one ever had. Blues so soulful it touched the coldest of hearts. Soon after, Johnson would pass away, with no formal autopsy and little documentation. To this day, his death is still mostly a mystery. This sounds to me much more like the work of Papa Legba than the work of Satan. Papa Legba offers his assistance in exchange for an offering, and how great could his assistance be with such an offering as a soul? The streets burn with the passion of a few thousand half-drunk dancers. You watch them from the balcony of the recital hall, a few drinks deep yourself, just enough to ease you to sleep. You watch them all, this huge gathering of different people, all expressing their culture in this intense Dionysian celebration. It's beautiful, human, and somehow it feels mystical. Like you're watching a modern living mosaic. Flames of many colors spiral into the sky from torch blowers. Rainbow ribbons flare and swirl. Prisms of neon light reflect off the band's brass instruments. The smoke smell of spicy gumbo and the herbaceous citrusy caramel of the sazerac on your tongue elevates the experience to something magical, an experience for all the senses. Maybe a smidge overstimulating. It's time to turn in for the night, plus the recital hall has a lights-out policy at midnight. Feels kinda strange to have limits in a city so well founded on individual freedom, but they're letting you stay in the loft instead of renting a hotel, so you can't complain. You turn your back to the railing and set your third sazerac down on the platter near the felt-lined chair. Your blazer is a bit sticky from the sweat of today's reverie, but you manage to get it off without too great a struggle. The lanyard around your neck. You clasp it for a moment and look at your picture. You give a tense smile. It's bittersweet. If only you knew it, Mom, you say out loud. She always pushed you toward it, this dream of music. You told her one day your music would pull people from all walks of life together, that they'd line up round the block just to hear you perform. But when she passed, Dad took it hard. You told him you'd give up on music to help settle her debts, just as he advised when you first brought pursuing music up to them. Family first, he said. Serve the family first, then do whatever you want. But this time, maybe it was a moment of grief, or maybe it was just him wanting to do right by her. This time he looked you square in the eye and with a tearful determination across his face, he told you, "Kid, if you even think about putting the bass down, I'll break your goddamn legs." You exhale quick and hard through your nostrils, fighting back the tears and stifling a loving smile. You can still walk. Leaning half-drunk against the balcony railing, laminated access card between your index finger and thumb, you realize you're lost in thought again. Big day tomorrow, better sober up and get some sleep. Just as you begin to walk, you feel a quick tug at your neck and a gentle click sound as the access card is lifted from your neck. You spin on your heel and reach out toward the lanyard, which is currently residing within the thin beak of a black-eyed crow. You reach over the balcony and get a grasp on it. The crow erratically pulls at it, and as it does, you feel yourself lose your balance. The fall, luckily, is broken by a few trash bags, and thankfully so. The two-story fall would have been more than enough to be your end. Your neck, legs, and spine hurt, but you're sapient, and you can move everything. You feel the laminated access card in your hand and go to pull it toward your head just to make sure it's there. Pain racks through the entirety of your left arm, and you look over and sit up simultaneously. Your elbow is bent at a 90-degree angle. Backward. You snuff the scream in your throat and the pain slams home. Tears well and your heart races. How the hell do you play a bass without your strumming arm? You stand, bleeding from your fingertips, and your head. Hospital, you've got to find a hospital. You reach up toward the back of your head. It's wet. Really wet. The light struggles to reflect off of the dark purple blood on your hand, and the last thing you see before you pass out, a man with a cane and a hobble stepping toward you. You wake up in the hospital bed. The throbbing in your head is intense but manageable. Your arm has been held in place by pins in a huge metal trap to keep it from bending awkwardly. The nurse calls the doctor in and explains that you've hyperextended your elbow and shattered your humerus, with 2 minor fractures to your ulna and radius. Doctor says if not for the alcohol in your system, you'd likely have died from the fall. Your muscles were loose and relaxed. In a normal state of consciousness, your entire body would have become rigid. And well, that would have been bad. The first words out of your mouth are, "What time is it?" The doctor says 2:34 a.m. Stunned, you ask him when you'll be discharged. He says it's unlikely that you'll be able to go anywhere for at least a day. You sit up and immediately that pain in your head pulls you back down. The doctor warns you not to move too much as you've got a fracture in your skull big enough to fit the state of Delaware into. Bedside manner, not his specialty. He tells you to rest, and that he'll be back in an hour or so to check on you. This is time you don't have. You've got a load in at 7 a.m. and a performance at 7 p.m. The nurse comes back and sits on the stool next to your shattered arm. She's older. Dark mahogany complexion, piercing green eyes, thick curls, and a bit of extra weight set in her cheeks. She gives you a warm smile and tells you everything's gonna be alright. You're in the best hands New Orleans can offer. Immediately, you tell her you need to leave, that you're a musician and this is your entire career down the drain if you don't make it. She shakes her head and tells you, "Baby, you're not leaving. You can't even walk." You tell her there's no choice. You must be there and you must perform. The nurse takes a deep breath and rises in the chair. "I get off in 20 minutes, she says. I'll be back, just don't try anything stupid." Perplexed, you try to question her, but she gently walks away. They kept the access card and lanyard in your hand. They weren't able to pry it away from you without breaking your fingers. You look at it, and with a great deal of effort, and even greater pain, you flip it over to see the picture of yourself. There's a smear of blood across the picture. It's a good look for you. The world's longest 20 minutes passes, and the nurse returns in a windbreaker, carrying her purse and a set of papers. "You're discharged, but under my care for the next 24 hours. I'm gonna pump you full of morphine, and you're gonna come with me." Immediate red flags everywhere, and she senses your reticence. She tells you, "Look, if you want to perform tomorrow, I'm your best bet." Your eyes give it away, and she begins to unlock the cradle around your arm. As the cradle falls, she gently guides it to your side and pins it into a sling for you. The pain is immeasurable for a moment, but then the morphine sets in and things become tolerable. Shaky, but tolerable. Your night becomes a series of morphine-induced blurs. You're in a wheelchair. She wheels you to the staff elevator, and then it's cold. You can see the moon. No stars. Light pollution in New Orleans is stuff of legends. Then you're in her car. She looks to you and says something. You've no idea what she said. You see the signs saying you've left city limits, and check the clock. 4:14 a.m. There's trees all around you. The guardrail seems to infinitely extend. And then, open plains. As far as you can see, there's open plains and the errant windmill. The car stops. Check the clock. 5:31 a.m. "Take this," she tells you, standing in the threshold of the open car door. You look to her as she spins like water swirling down a drain. She puts it in your hand and presses it to your chest. It's a bottle of some sort. A dark liquid sloshes, viscous and ruddy. You stand up, getting out of the car. Gravel crunches beneath your feet. You notice you're not wearing any shoes. The woman sits you down against the edge of the car. She begins drawing in the gravel, moving the stones, 4 keys all facing each other. The key's teeth form 4 crosses in the middle. She sets down a small twig, curved at the top, thin through the middle, whittled to a point at the bottom. Your mind is a whirlwind. You hear her tell you to say something you can't understand. She slaps you. Probably not the best thing to do to a patient with a hairline fracture, but it wakes you up for a second. "Papa Legba, open the gate for me. Say this," she says. You nod and say the phrase. Nothing happens. She steps away from you and looks across the hood of the car with wide eyes and a smile. You try to stand, but fail horrendously. A hand touches your left shoulder. You immediately wince, but there's no pain. You meet his eyes, and something in your head calms. No more strange flashes of sight. Your vision unblurs. The world around you begins to make sense again. It's stopped spinning. Emerald green eyes bear into you, deep, natural, and shining. And what do you have to offer today? The voice cradles you like a weighted blanket, like the arms of a loving parent. The cold glass of the bottle enters your periphery as your senses come to a complete return. You shakily present the bottle. The figure laughs throaty and full. Ah, a favorite. He uncorks the bottle with his thumb and takes a swig. The smell of anise, black licorice, sugarcane, plums, and burnt caramel fills the air. He gives a warm, verbal affirmation and sets the bottle down. "This'll do," he says with a quickness. All at once, you feel your body lifted into the air, but you can feel the gravel still below you. It's as if a part of you is torn away, floating and ephemeral. Everything gets all spinny again, and you get the sensation of being upside down. It all goes to black. A memory plays. Your mother's hands cradling the neck of the bass, slipping up and down with rehearsed ease. You never quite understood how she just seemed to know where all the notes were. Even now, you're impressed by it. She looks up at you, smiles, that beautiful, toothy smile of hers, and outstretches her strumming hand. She takes your hand and guides it along the fingerboard, strumming with your fingers on the strings and hers on your hand. You wake up. Your alarm blares through the loft, and a cold breeze slips across your face. You left the balcony open all night? 6:45. 15 minutes to get dressed and get downstairs. You speed to the bathroom, get your looks in order, make sure your shirt's wrinkle-free and your tie's on straight. You find your manager in the lobby. They look to you and ask where your lanyard is. You reach toward your chest where it should be. Not there. You ask them to wait a second. They stammer that it's 6:58 and they're tired of you being late, but you're already halfway up the stairs. You race to the nightstand and there you find it. Your hands slip around the string and you stop. You flip it over. Looking at the picture, there's no blood. Hell of a dream. Maybe you should quit drinking, you think to yourself. But just past the laminated card, you read Tulane Medical Center at the top of a crisp white sheet stapled to 3 more. Discharge papers, going over each of your injuries, stating you're in the care of an in-home nurse, Brigitte something. Your mind swirls at the thought. How could it possibly be? You're cut off as your manager walks up behind you, rattling your ear off. You nod and race downstairs. That evening, after your performance, you're alone in the hall, bass next to you staring out against the stands. You've never performed better. Your hands just seem to have found the notes, as if guided by something other than your own skill. You pack everything up and begin walking out of the recital hall with the case. It's colder tonight, and the streets have just a little less hustle and bustle. You pass the trash bags onto which you'd fallen before, dried blood spattered across the white plastic. Something flashes in your peripheral, and you crane your head. You see a woman on a bench. She's cradling a crow with a thin beak and dark eyes. A black cat sits on her lap. She looks up at you and smiles with those old green eyes, dark mahogany skin, and a bit of weight around her cheeks. Immediately you turn to walk toward her. She puts a hand up, and it's just enough to stop you. Good thing, too, because one more step and you would have been hit by the speeding double-decker bus a nose hair in front of you. When the bus passes, the bench is empty. Walking off, arm locked with a tall man carrying a cane and a bottle of dark rum, you see her striding smoothly down the street. Papa Legba's importance among those of the African diaspora is commensurately earned and evident. He leads his followers along a new path, through a new doorway. He opens the gate. In media today, you might find Papa Legba in the likes of shows such as American Horror Story, or in songs such as Papa Legba by Talking Heads. All in all, Papa Legba's legend is vastly intriguing, and in my research, I've come to the conclusion that I really want to visit New Orleans. Maybe keep some dark rum on me if I go. Or candy. Papa Legba likes candy as well. With that, I have been your host, Benjamin Cloud. This has been Just the Myth on the Mythic Muscle Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, a fantastic lift, or if it's a rest day, go research voodoo. It's really cool stuff. Take care, folks. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. For only $3 a month, you get Discord access, and you buy me a protein bar. $5 a month gets you Discord access with special colors and emotes, blooper reels, a shout out from me, and transcripts of each episode. $10 a month gets you all of that noise, a vote in our monthly poll, a personalized 10-second clip of whatever you want me to say, and every dollar spent at that tier goes right back into the podcast so that I might bring you a better listening experience. Follow my socials. You can find me on pretty much every platform by searching for Mythic Muscle Podcast and looking for the helmet crossed with the barbell and the microphone. If you made it this far, you're my favorite type of human, and I hope you have a wonderful day, a fantastic lift, or if it's a rest day, you get some quality relaxation time. Thank you.